What are some of the key principles that you believe are important for a thriving marriage?
I'm responsible for my experience. He's not here to make me feel better. He's not here to make my problems go away. He's here to share life with.
A lot of our beliefs were laid down before we even were conscious of what we were believing. And if we can listen and be open to what some other person is saying, we might be able to update or refute something that we have had belief in our whole lives.
I think when you have love and you have God in the center of your existence, that's a safe harbor. It's a safe harbor. Nobody wants to hear and know what they can or can't do. And so I've really found what's most sincere is to provide choices.
How has motherhood impacted your spiritual life?
I think the recognition before she was born, I had the illusion that being a mother, that you're the center of their life. I recognize I'm a puzzle piece of her life.
Hi, Sage.
Hi once again, Tammy.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
You as well.
Okay, let's talk about God. Okay.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. In all sorts of ways. But let's talk about your relationship with God.
Yes.
And you can tell, how has your faith influenced your daily life and your decision making? How does that work?
Oh, my word. Well, it influences every decision at this stage of my life. And
how does that go about? How does that happen?
Well, I didn't always recognize this, but from my own experience, we all have two voices. And if it isn't a voice, there's, the voice of mind, of the egoic voice, which is, I can't do this, I'm not enough, you're going to fail, whatever, internal or external judgment, usually from that lens. And then the voice of willingness, the voice of receptivity. For myself, I feel I don't hear. It's not auditory, but I feel an impulse that I've identified at this stage as like a sensation, an instinct, I suppose you could call it, and that is what I listen to most, and that is why I'm sitting in front of you today.
Okay.
Through that impulse, through that instinct, that I feel like I put a yes to it, like yes, or I'll feel what I call to be my brakes.
Oh, okay.
And that is the truest voice, the truest path. I never recognized up until this stage of my life that I really believe that God, we all have access to that reality. We all meet in this human experience, and I really believe that the true equality is our experience of grace or access to wisdom, and with our free will, it's up to each of us to be able to tune into that, or to penetrate the illusions and delusions of narrative of mind at times. And rise above that noise, and to recognize that, for myself anyways, that life is happening for me, even if it's possibly a painful circumstance, even if it's a challenging circumstance. And so that is very much, I pray, we were speaking earlier about the different rituals and the support of rituals and traditions, and then just prayer is it's a noticing for myself at this stage. It's a noticing, and it can be as simple as noticing a flower, feeling the breeze on my face, our little one holding mom's hand, the sweetness of that. The beauty in another human being, the beauty of your faith, of your love of life, of your love of God. I don't know what that means to you personally, but I feel that in you, through you. And so I trust that that's why this conversation has been led. And I think it's really beautiful. We all come together in this human experience with different references, different conditioning, different life experience, different education, different religions, or not. whether we're agnostic or atheist. I think if we're, or at least for myself, I was going to say, if we're honest, if I'm honest, in moments in time, I've probably been all perspectives. And at this stage, it's very much just something that is a part of my every waking life.
I feel that way too. Well, I want that to be the case.
Yes.
I desire that to be the case.
Yes. And how does it, I'm curious how you feel your faith at this stage of your life, how do you connect or if that's appropriate, if I ask you?
Oh, sure. So when I was young, I went to a Presbyterian church with my sisters and my mother. And I started studying yoga when I was 13 and didn't go to church anymore, but went back to the church when I was 25 or so. But I was in a different town and I was on my own. And I didn't put myself really out there to be a part of the congregation. So I still felt separate and I stopped going, So I wasn't allowing myself to really share my own experience with other people in order to help it grow. I was still kind of skeptical and just going to services, but then wondering whether what was happening there was something that I could benefit from, I think was all I was really concerned about. I didn't know it was I didn't understand. It's funny, because I'd done yoga. I'd practiced every day for years. Yet it took me a while to realize that practice I could do in church too. I could do with the Bible. I could just practice prayer, and that the practice of that would have consequences when I'm in discomfort for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. When you're in discomfort?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've gone to Al-Anon. I during the lockdown, when my husband was away, and he was away for nearly 2 years because he was sick for so long. And I really found a lot of comfort going to meetings with people and sharing them sharing what made them uncomfortable and how they would find a better way through the program and what the prayers that are offered within that program. Because they give you things to say like, this too shall pass,
yes,
or let go and let God. And sometimes just one of those little things I found could be really helpful to me. So at night, maybe I'd wake up with these racing thoughts about something or other.
Well,
and then I would just say, thy will be done, over and over and over and over until I fell asleep again. And then I got so that I wouldn't allow those thoughts to come. I would replace them with prayer.
Amen.
Yeah. And it worked. And then I stopped having, the thoughts just don't come as often anymore. I don't have to be consciously praying all the time to keep them at bay. It's as if I've retrained my brain to be in one more of acceptance instead of always questioning.
Yes.
Yeah, and being at odds, so it's not like that anymore. And I think, if you have a whole life of this, you wonder what it's like to be somebody whose brain is always going, but it can be that way. And
absolutely,
and when I say my brain is going, let's see, someone contacted me and I feel a little awkward and I have to decide what I'm going to say back. And then I've got all these ideas of what I could say and stuff. But now I can just say, well, I don't know what to do about that. I'll just leave that. And when I should answer will become obvious. And that's what will happen. But I do hear a voice. Yeah. But it's only in the last couple of years that I've heard a voice. And at first I didn't know what it was, but I do know there's two voices.
Yes.
Yeah, I know there's the voice that tells me I'm not good enough.
Absolutely.
Or no, I shouldn't do this or that. But then I have this other voice that says, and it's a still quiet voice that says, if you say what you need, then you can do what you have to do. And if I listen, so for instance, last week, we were going to go give a talk, and I had a 45-minute drive to the theater. So I was going to prepare on the way to the theater. But Dr. Peterson was tired and had had a sleep, and he'd slept too long, and he'd missed a call. So on the way to the talk, he wanted to have a call, and thinking of me, he asked me if I wanted to go in the other vehicle, which was with two of our friends. And that changed my plan, right? It changed my plan. And I thought, I was going to prepare, and now I can't prepare, but he wants to be alone. So I said yes, that he could be by himself. And then I heard this little voice, and it said, sit in the front seat. They can sit in the back seat. They can talk, but you have to prepare, you know? But I usually sit in the back seat. So I sat in the back seat. I didn't listen. And then they started talking because they were excited to be going, and they were talking. And I thought, well, I'll just put this aside. I'll speak about something that I already know about, and I don't really have to prepare. So I thought I dealt with that okay. And then we got to the theater, but there'd been so much traffic, we were late. So then I only had time to put my lipstick on, and I was out there and getting ready to go on stage. And I hadn't even got the theme of what I was going to talk about yet, because I don't use any notes, but I usually know the gist of it, you know?
Yeah, yes.
And so then George says to me, are you ready? I said, no. Well, then I made him nervous, right? So then he said, well, I could give you some advice. And I was like, I don't want any advice. I only have 5 minutes and I want to get ready. So then I've hurt his feelings. Right? And so it was this one thing. And of course the evening went fine, but I thought, if I just sat in the front seat, if I just listened to that little small voice, it told me what to do.
Yes.
Come on, Tammy. Clue in.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Beautiful. And honestly, so incredibly relatable. It's, I that's where we all meet. We all have this path and find our way home in different ways. And as I mentioned earlier, I grew up as well going to AA. My father's in AA. He's been in over 50 years. And so I've gone to more AA meetings than church. And it's such an extraordinary program.
It is.
There's the basis points of a real path of spirituality, self-responsibility, and, turning your life over to a higher power. And like you said, there's beautiful notions or threads and prayers, the serenity prayer. Mm-hmm. I remember saying that prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
My grandmother taught me that prayer when I was a child. I didn't know where she got it from. And then I went to an Al-Anon meeting and I was like, oh, there's the prayer my grandmother always taught me.
And I said it for years with no meaning.
Right.
It hasn't been probably till maybe the last 5-10 years of my life that I actually recognize or experience more accurately what that prayer means and the surrender of between, that perspective. And I think there's so many tools or paths or communities and then internal practices that help for us to, for myself anyways, live the most sincere life at this stage of my life. And sincere doesn't mean right or wrong. Sincere just means what feels most true inside myself at this stage. And like you said, the little voice spoke to you and you didn't listen to it. And then you had that self-correction. I have that all the time. Sometimes I'll feel something and I don't know that I'm meant to act. I don't, and I'll ignore it. Same thing.
Yeah.
And then that experience leads you to a reference point. And sometimes it's like, wow, that was less pleasant. I'll tune in. So it's incredibly relatable. I relate more than I can convey, Tammy.
Yeah. And that's a real joy for me to recognize when I've been given a challenge for the day. And I'm always given a challenge. I think that I don't know why that it's because we are insufficient in our understanding. We have to also always be given a challenge to be a little bit closer to God, right? A little more enlightened, a little less high and mighty, right? So a little less high and mighty. So just give you a little bit of a challenge, and then you think, oh yeah, I still have lots to learn.
Oh,
right? Oh yeah.
oh,
At the end of every day, oh yeah,
yeah.
I have lots to learn.
I've never felt more like a student. Especially being a parent at this stage, I've never felt more like, I know so little, and yet humbled by that reality. And as well, there's areas in life where I feel, gosh, blue sky, and then I'll be living my life and something hits my stuff, and
Yes,
completely and utterly humbled, and and on my knees. I mean, literally sometimes. I'm very humbled by that continued evolution, that composts us, that renews us, that restores us, that strips us what's maybe not our fullest truth. Or from my own experience, I can look at a picture of myself 5 years ago or a year ago, and I'll see her, and I have such compassion for her because I know I remember what I was believing and thinking. Or I might look at what I was dressing and think, gosh, what was I thinking? Or what I had chosen at that time. I think that's the gift of this human experience, is we do miss. I'm not where I am today because I've done everything perfectly. I've missed and continue to miss as a human being on this path. But I think the gift is when we do is to learn and learn from that, and tune and choose differently. Just like our little one right now, she's, potty training, and today she, she missed, and it's like, it's another opportunity. She didn't like the sensation of it. She didn't like the feeling of it. Wanted to, change her little shorts as quick as possible. And yet that's me, in a different context, in a different experience, in a different area. Life is always offering, when we miss, to realign and to reconnect. And I think that's really powerful and beautiful.
I like the example of potty training, because when a child is young and at 2 years old and needs to be subject to their body.
Yes.
So, right. And so it's their first challenge. It's their first challenge that's going to bring them either to accept that they cannot control everything, right?
Yeah.
They cannot control everything, or they're just going to be always having trouble if they're going to be always peeing their pants, because they're just not going to go to the bathroom when they need to. I don't have to, and you can see that. I know my daughter was very easy to train. My son was a little harder to train because he wanted control. If he was out playing baseball or something, he didn't want to stop.
Yeah.
He didn't want to stop. And he did that so often that eventually was it me? I'm not sure who did this, but we started singing a song for the pee dance, because he would dance. He would be dancing because we knew he needed to go, but he didn't want to go. And I mean, you have to go. That's just the way life is. You have to give up control. And it's that first giving up control. We end up trying to get that control back, as we grow up again and go further and get more challenges. But that, it really is the first indication of, this is, you have to be humble.
Yes, yes. And it isn't always everything that, from my own experience, that what I want.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's really powerful. And when it is something that, I'm enforcing what I want, it's usually really clunky.
Yeah.
And I'll feel resistance, and it just doesn't feel as true in my inner being. And so that's like the alarm clock. That's like, hey, I'm off. Choose differently. It's the internal resistance that I feel.
What
at
do
times.
they say in AA? They say, all my best plans got me here.
Uh, that's,
So I'm
yeah,
done with that, right?
yeah,
I'm done with having my plans.
yeah. It's
My
just
plans have never got me where I needed to go. They've
mm,
never got me to a place that was as fulfilling as the places that I now go with God's guidance.
mm,
Yeah.
it's full.
Yeah. And it's definitely worth trying it out. But it took a lot of practice
Yes.
to get to this
Mhm.
place.
Practice and for myself, pain. Uh,
Uh-huh.
both pain
Yeah,
had
yeah, a lot of pain.
has it and still does at times. And that just feels like if I'm believing a belief or a thought or a limitation of something, and I'm that narrative is running, it's can be brutal. It can be really painful, and to inquire, to question, to perceive, and to broaden the lens or broaden the perceptual scope of a circumstance. And a question that often I'll ask myself: what am I missing? What are you missing? And I love like where that takes me or what consciousness shows, because it's usually so much more benevolent than the story of mind. It's so much
Mm-hmm.
more kinder and also invokes compassion, because a lot of times if we're listening to the narrative of mind, we can miss what the others, how they're impacted.
Yeah, I talk about listening sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
I'm on stage. I talk about listening and what it means to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about that there's the speaker and the listener. So
Sure.
it's a communication, listening. And if you have a really good listener, then as a speaker, you can go deeply into what you're trying to say because you have someone who's really paying attention. But if the listener is thinking about, oh, I don't agree with that,
Mm-hmm.
or let's see, I bet I can think up something that, will bring this to a place where you're not listening because you're thinking about other things. That's actually not listening. And the thing that I thought was interesting of all the stuff I've read was a lot of our beliefs were laid down before we even were conscious of what we were believing. And if we can listen and be open to what some other person is saying, we might be able to update or refute something that we have had belief in our whole lives, but realize that, well, that actually isn't helpful.
Yes, yes.
But you got
It's
to listen in order to find that out. You got to be open to the fact that you have something to learn.
yeah.
And that if you're really lucky, you'll hear something, right?
Yep, true. And sometimes it's from ourselves, and sometimes it's from another in the most unexpected package and version of, uh, that's just this beautiful connected experience, and where we're not all so different. No matter where we come from, we all meet in this human journey in Earth School. We all have this inner world to understand, this inner world to transcend, and beliefs or attachments that are limiting and can be incredibly painful when we believe them.
What do
We've
you
all
mean by
felt,
attachments? Can you explain attachments?
well, an attachment, if I believe the thought that I can't meet with Tammy Peterson, I'm attached to that thought. I mean, what will I say?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's an intellectual. I'm not.
But I'm not.
But mine can. So I can't do that.
Right, right.
How can I do that? I'm attached to that belief. If I feel that our daughter should be, I don't know, I'm making it up right now, but
Yeah.
she has to play hockey, and because I'm Canadian, and so she has to play. I'm attached to that, and I might miss actually what she's most pulled to or connected to, or if I believe that my husband he's working too hard and he shouldn't go on this trip and it's too much for you. I'm attached to that belief, but
Yeah.
that attachment of that, it locks, from my own experience anyways, it locks me to not perceive or connect to a greater truth. And I'm missing reality. So I look for that inside that those sticky attachments that
Mm-hmm.
blind us to the truth of a greater truth, anyways, of reality and what's happening here now.
Yeah, and I find that those attachments too, if I can disentangle myself from those,
Yes.
then I have a clearer path to listening to my higher power, right?
Yes.
I have a much clearer path. But as long as I'm attaching to other things, it muffles the sound, and it confuses what I'm seeing.
Sure.
If something happens that makes me uncomfortable, maybe a conversation that I'm having with someone, and we come to a place where it brings up emotion in me or something,
Yes.
and then I want to say something, but I won't now. I'll just pause. Right. I'll pause until my emotions are all calm again. And then, in fact, sometimes I'll pause long enough that I've forgotten what it was I had planned to say.
I
But,
didn't have that mastered.
but then the thing will be said. I'll say it and
Yes.
realize I've said it without planning to say it. Now that's the right time.
Yes.
And then it doesn't cause any waves at all.
True.
And I think, so that's very interesting. And of course, I still feel like I'm pretty new at this. So living this way. And so it's a practice. And I'm learning to see what the outcome is. I don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Well,
And all I'm doing is trying to make sure that my interactions aren't harmful. Yeah. And that's, that takes quite a bit of the time that I have, is making sure that all the interactions that I'm having are going. I was talking to some woman the other day. I hadn't seen her in a long time, a friend who came. And she was telling me stories of when we were young, and I was listening, and then I was thinking, oh, she's telling me stories about when we were young so that I could remember. And I was aware enough to say, oh, so then I started telling her stories of when we were young, of things I remembered. And I remembered when I used to go over to her house and her older brother would play the accordion on Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the kitchen. He'd be playing the accordion, and I'd come in the house, and it was all festive. And they lived across from the Catholic high school, and there would always be dances or weddings or stuff going on right across the street. But we'd have our own thing going on in the house, and my friend didn't remember that, and I gave her that, and I was so grateful to give her that back. Yeah, and we think we have to do so much for each other, but really what we have to do is just be aware. Be aware and do the next right thing. I love that. Do the next right thing.
That's gorgeous.
Do you know that one? Jordan told me it's Carl Jung. Do the next right thing.
I haven't heard of that, and yet it's beautiful, and I believe we do that naturally and intrinsically when we are in our nature.
Yeah.
I don't have that mastered to be so conscious every moment that what I'm going to say or how I say it is in perfect harmony in every moment. And yet at this stage of my life, just a couple weeks ago, my husband and I, he had said something to me, and he gave me advice that was actually really practical and effective. And he was actually very dialed in the state I was in and in the lens that I was seeing it. I didn't want to hear it. And I completely and utterly told him so. And I walked out of the kitchen. And by the time I got upstairs, I took a breath and I thought, okay, I actually smiled at myself because I saw how ridiculous I behaved. So my practice is, if I am out of coherence or I'm disconnected or I'm charged, I walked back down and I said, Tone, I'm so sorry, I wasn't my best self in that moment. And he laughed, I laughed. And I think that's this beautiful human experience, is the allowance of the human. And I think sometimes, whether it be politicians or religious leaders or people on social media, we expect this false perception of who or how they or we are supposed to be. And we're human. We're all figuring this out. And it's kind. It's kind when we can, accept and allow the humanness and recognize that, because it's happening within inside of ourselves. So what your art of, tuning yourself before you speak, it's very unique and such a beautiful practice and so profound, because it only invokes that harmony and connectedness and sincerity. And this practice isn't about being, for those of you who are listening, certainly from my own perception, it's not about being perfect. It's just catching ourselves. When I fall asleep, I know what falling asleep feels like. It's painful. It feels resistance. It feels out of alignment internally. And so if I feel that, I look to tidy that up first inside myself and then with whoever I'm in front of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We had some friends on tour, different friends. Different people travel with us, which is so helpful because we've been away for so long, and it's nice to have people come, and they're grateful and they bring a newness back into the situation, and that's always good. So we were going to get on a plane, and my two friends were coming with me, and they were all excited, but one of them had just arrived, and she'd gone through many time zones to come and join us.
True.
And she had forgot her phone in the cab and her sweater at the hotel. She was just like, and I said, well, today's day 3. That's the day to forget everything because you're jet lagged. And then I realized that my passport was in my backpack and it was already on the plane. And we were going to be at a regular airport. And so I needed my passport. And this made my other friend who was there, who's also in my little Al-Anon group, she said, it made her nervous. It made her nervous to see these things that were not quite right, And so she said to me, your passport would fit in that little purse of yours that you're carrying. And I said something kind of harsh to her. Like, that's not where it goes. It goes in my backpack,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then that night I was reading a reading, and it was talking about harm. And I thought, I've never been really abused, or there hasn't been a lot of harm in my life, I wouldn't say. But I wasn't thinking about harm in all of the different ways that you might be harmed, and I realized, I harmed this woman. I was harsh in my response to her. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just leave that there as I do. I'll just leave that there and it'll happen. I'll be able to say what I need to say I'm sorry. And so then we were walking that evening and then all of a sudden she was just a little bit ahead of me and everybody was kind of engaged, and I just put my arm around her and I said, sorry about this afternoon. I was harsh with you and I didn't need to be. And she said, well, I didn't need to say what I said. It wasn't any of my business. And we laughed away. We just laughed away. Oh, so nice,
It is so fresh. So
yeah.
It's really, that's such a lovely, it's just so beautiful to catch ourselves. And I think if we're human, we've innocently, unconsciously, we've harmed and we've been harmed both. And that's not a locked perspective. It's just when we fall asleep, if we're unconscious.
Yes, that's right.
It's innocent.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a disagreeable person, so I'm very blunt. And I find
very agreeable.
Oh, thank you. I can be blunt. And sometimes. Oh yeah, well, yeah. And so sometimes that comes off as pretty harsh. And so I'm trying to train myself to be kinder, more kind. And it's taking some work, but it's worthwhile. It's definitely worthwhile. I think my relationships are much better. Jordan, he comments that things, although he says, it was wonderful to be married with me the whole time, that things are really good now. And I think, isn't that nice to make things better?
Yeah. Well, you're a beautiful husband, Dr. Peterson and Tony. I mean, they're beautiful minds, they're beautiful hearts, beautiful spirits, and both of their lives are so committed to being an example, and as well sharing their experience and their reference point to help instill or reflect anyways the gift of this human experience, and to have a vision and a purpose. And they actually have so many junctures of alignment. It's really quite remarkable. They come at it differently. It expresses it animates differently, but they're both beautifully such emotional men. Tony stature, so does Dr. Peterson, and yet and both such brilliant minds and both such tender hearts. Tony can cry. Sometimes he'll be crying, and I'm not crying myself, and I'm so fascinated at what moves him differently than myself. And I certainly know Dr. Peterson as well is moved to tears, and I just think that that's really so extraordinary and so beautiful. We come in these packages, and yet we all have access to masculine and feminine within inside of ourselves. And both of our husbands really come in such unique packages. And we've lived on the road. You've lived on the road in such a unique way, and doing lectures or seminars. It's beautiful. It's beautiful for myself. It's never gotten old. Even for those who are listening here right now, or those that come to a lecture or a seminar, their hunger, their hunger to want to understand themselves, to want to be more, share more, give more, explore, to let go of what's no longer needed. And people ask what that experience has been like. That's something has never gotten old for me. And I've just fallen in love with these beautiful souls, these beautiful humans that, want more out of their lives. Because we're here, we're living. It's a miracle to be alive. It's a miracle that we have this technology, just all of it. It's a miracle that our bodies are being breathed. We knew nothing for that. It's a miracle that life exists in us, never mind around us. And that's just...
You're in a place of gratitude, huh?
Truly, it's been...
Yeah. And that's a practice too. And that's a practice as well, gratitude.
Yes, it is. And it becomes... And when I'm not, if I'm suffering, it's usually because I'm lacking gratitude for something or someone in my life, or there's a false expectation that life should be different, or somebody should be behaving or doing something different for me. Then I'm crazy in my life. And then I'm disconnected from that gratitude. So for those of you that are listening, this, we speak about a practice, but it's really here now. We have the opportunity to reconnect every moment to a greater truth. I remember when I went to India the first time, and I had the lens of enlightenment, and it was like awakening and enlightenment, and it felt like something out here that I was going to attain or gain, or it would be this solidified place that, I don't know, you would experience, and then all your problems would go away. And it was so naive and so innocent and yet ignorant at that stage. And from this perspective, where the lens of where I am today, I just recognize it's this moment. Life gives us an opportunity to wake up to a kinder and more truer reality in this moment. Life offers us an opportunity to notice what possibly we missed the moment before, and to appreciate. And as you so beautifully have offered, to extend kindness, to extend love, to pause and catch yourself. I love what you shared, Tammy, before you speak. I don't do that every time. I do that at times, but I don't do that every time.
No, I don't do it every time, but it's a practice.
It is a practice. And you're sharing that you can be curt. I can be curt. I can be completely direct. You'd met Mary earlier, who's a beloved friend, and when I first met her at the beginning, she cried a lot, and I thought she was just emotional. It didn't occur to me that I might be contributing to that.
Oh dear.
Truth. It's the truth.
Yeah.
And that caused a shift inside of me. It's an eternal shift. When I say an eternal shift, it's something I'm aware of, whether it be my mom. Sometimes I'll hang up the phone from my mom, and maybe I'm doing something and I'll feel rushed, and I'll call her back and I'll just say, Mom, I love you so much. If I was just short when I hung up, I'm sorry. I was just, I've got to get on a call, but I just want you to know, it's such a gift to be able to catch myself to catch ourselves at this stage.
Yes.
And then to offer something more authentic, or to offer something more sincere. As I shared the experience with Tony the other day, and, he was laughing and I was laughing, and we tease. What's beautiful, I'm sure you experience this as well. We tease each other about, after you've been, I don't know how many years, I think you've been together since you were in elementary school.
Yeah, but we've been married about, I don't know, 34 years or something.
Wow, that's remarkable. Yeah. So after all those years, you kind of, you understand yourself more, you understand your other, and you get over yourself, hopefully, all the stuff at the beginning of, I just think of how we relate to each other. I feel like we're pretty much stripped of everything but love and gratitude, and if something comes up that my stuff gets hit, or if he does, we tidy it up. We tidy it up in real time, because it hurts to be disconnected.
Yeah. When we first married, I think it used to take us 3 days sometimes to tie something up,
Yes. And that's so painful.
Yeah. And then it wouldn't happen as often, but when it happened, it would be just as intense. The arguments that we would have would be and it was like, wow, how can that happen, that it can be that intense? But it would reconcile over the years. It would just be a faster and faster reconciliation, because I guess we learn to listen to one another and to negotiate. And so then you can find a better place sooner. I've been thinking about negotiation recently, about so being in a disagreement and then negotiating with someone, finding common ground. When you found common ground, because the spirit of play emerges. And if you haven't negotiated completely, then you're still feeling there's still a disconnect. So then it's still kind of awkward, and it's not, but it's a dance. Once you've negotiated completely, you're in a new place, and it's a dance. And that's so exciting. Yeah. So Jordan and I, when we have a date, we dance.
Really?
So, yeah, we dance. He went to Nashville last year. We were in a little country bar, and there was a woman there who was working there, and she was a dance teacher. She asked Jordan if he wanted a dance lesson. Guess it looked like he needed a dance lesson. But he said yes. He said yes. And so he had a little dance lesson, and it only took her a few minutes, because she knew what she was doing, to tell him how to lead. And it made sense to him, And what's beautiful is that now when we dance, my dad could dance, and he used to dance with me, at weddings and things. So I loved to dance with my father because he knew how to dance. But now that Jordan knows how to dance, I can use the moves that my dad taught me. And then I can have the spirit of my father dancing with me again.
Well, that's extraordinary.
Isn't that, and so the things that you learn after being together for a long time, because I always wanted to dance. So and we danced, but we just didn't know how, and Jordan didn't know how, and that's okay.
Where do I?
Right.
Inspiring you to take a dance lesson.
Well, I'll get Jordan to teach you what he knows, and then you don't need any.
All right. That's beautiful. Next time we see each other.
Okay. That's a good idea. I want to ask you a question about marriage.
Yes.
What are some of the key principles or values that you believe are important for a thriving marriage?
Well, you mentioned one of them. You gave the metaphor of dance, and for Tony and I at this stage, I really feel that there's that art, and there's just an understanding and appreciation. If I was to say number one, it's dropping expectations and increasing appreciation. When we first got together, you have this idyllic view of what marriage or what husband or wife, whatever, that your partner is, what they're supposed to give to you. And that's clunky and that's painful. I'll speak for myself. That was awkward. I wanted him to understand me. I wanted him to be present for me. It was about me. And so as life has its way with us and has humbled me and us both, I feel like a lot of that has been stripped away, and just simply an appreciation and an understanding of our differences. And you use the word negotiation. I'd love afterwards to hear what that means to you. But I would look from my own reference point of just responsible. I'm responsible for my experience. He's not here to make me feel better. He's not here to make my problems go away. He's here to share life with. And so I think it's right perception and then appreciation of the gift of this beautiful human that God gave you to love, and that they are going to have their human conditioned responses at times or challenges. And I think one of the beautiful junctures of coming together is you get to love magnifies love, and it's something, the belief or the awareness, I suppose, more accurately, that I'm here to give love. I'm here to share the love that is my nature, rather than, hey, love me, pay attention to me. And I found different kind of ways. If I do one, I'll say, hun, you know what? I could really use 10 minutes, or I'd love to, I just ask when before it would come out if I was frustrated or come out if I was angry, and he didn't hear me. And then I would think, what a knucklehead, like what a do? Why aren't you hearing me? Why don't you understand me? And that just gets so freaking clunky. And so the art of making a request, honey, this would be meaningful to me. This would be meaningful to me. I have found to be incredibly powerful. I am responsible. I am responsible for my experience. And if I am not being my best self, I know it has nothing to do with him. It's me. That's my freedom. And then being able to bring that to the table. And then just the beauty that I never recognized. I think like this whole, notion or the idea of romance, love is so different than what is portrayed in a lot of films or Disney. It's more beautiful. It's more accurate because we're really mirroring, each other. And what I've recognized over all we've been together 20, we may be married for 22 years and together 24 years. And at this stage, like I see myself, I've claimed a lot of different attributes of Tony. He's claimed a lot of different attributes of myself. And I think that's why we come together. We come together for a greater level of holism within inside of ourselves. We're mirroring each other. And I've also come to recognize that everything I've believed, any judgment I put on him or frustration I had on him, it was me. That was me. And then just prayerfulness, at this as well, this stage, every meal we sit down together, we hold hands, we pray as a family. And that's usually just a prayer of gratitude. Thank you for this day, for this moment. Thank you for this life, for our family, whatever is organic, whatever is natural. And I feel like that lens, no matter what's happening in the external world, no matter what challenges we're having, that coming together, it creates the awareness throughout the meal or the evening of sharing. I just so appreciate that. We didn't do that in the beginning. We both had our faith and prayed separately, but I think it's so powerful as a family. Our little one, she prays, we hold hands, or she'll put her little hands like this, and sometimes I'll be like, sweetheart, what do you want to say thank you for? And Halo, our dog, or her little friend Jim up the street, or whatever that is. And I through all of that we've navigated, because you can have challenges individually and then challenges externally. I think when you have love and you have God in the center of your existence, that's a safe harbor. It's a safe harbor of sharing, and through everything that we have, this whole path and everything that we've experienced, good, bad, and indifferent, no matter how beautiful, no matter how messy, no matter how brutal, no matter from agony to ecstasy and everything in between. It just keeps getting kinder and simpler. I that's probably not the accurate word, but
I think that's a good one, because I do think it's simpler, because we're not trying to manipulate it. So it simplifies it.
And I was trying, and I didn't even see that I was trying to manipulate.
No, me neither.
Woman, I'll look at, like I said, I'll look at photos of myself or photos of us, and it's awkward almost sometimes to see myself. I have compassion for her because, I didn't even, if you would have asked me then or said that I was manipulating, I would have been defensive, because I was, love the action to the hook to get something rather than just give something. And at this stage, I only want that man's happiness. Like I only want our daughter's happiness, anybody I love. If I'm a part of it, beautiful. If I'm not, that's okay too. I get to witness and appreciate. And I think that's also a difference of maturity at this stage of, witness, just being able to not have to be involved in everything, just to witness and appreciate. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what about yourself and Jordan? What do you notice at this stage different than, say, 34 years ago, or over that trajectory of life?
I'm definitely not trying to make things go my way like I was. I was very good at that. I had a very strong self-will.
Yes. Me too. My husband used to call me an ox.
Yeah. My dad always told me when I was, a child, he would say that I talked too much. And I didn't know what he meant by that. But I was trying to get my way.
Yes.
I think I was trying to get my way. But it's funny, when your father says something, you listen.
Right?
Because when you're a child, if your father says something, you listen. And then you try to figure out what that means. So I think, now I'm in my 60s and I'm still thinking about what my father taught me, which is, that's a long time ago. But my marriage, when Jordan and I were first married, when we were first going to be married, he said, if we're going to do this, we have to tell the truth. And no one had ever said that to me before. I went away for about a year because I was living in a different city and thought about it. Thought about if I was living my life in truth or not. Everything I did, I looked at to see, what is this that I'm doing? Is that a good thing? And, I didn't even quite even know what it was that I should question. But it took me, years and years to come to understanding that not only did I have to not lie, but I had to actually be paying attention to my motivations and to make sure that they were also honorable. And it took me a long time to bring myself back to myself. I was taking care of my external world, making sure that my interactions in the external world, I was trying to listen to other people. And I think the practice of listening to other people started me to listen to myself. But it took quite a while for me to start to hear what it was that was going on, whether it was some voices that were not always beneficial, that some of my voices were to make me be quiet or to not do something for myself that I wanted to do. Maybe I should be doing things for other people, not for myself. But to become aware of that, oh man, I was so grateful to become aware of that, to see that that's what I do, that I will be happy to give up everything about myself so that somebody else that I love will be okay. And that's not helpful. It's not helpful because I have, what do they say? The little church song that you sing to your little kids, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Amen.
I wasn't always letting my light shine, and I still don't, I'm sure.
And so?
But I've learned through the marriage that if I let what I need out and share that with myself and with the world, that makes my marriage better. Because then he knows me better, doesn't he?
Of course.
Yeah.
Tammy, I'm just so appreciating this conversation and so appreciate your courage and your self-reflection and willingness to see yourself and to tune yourself. It's so refreshing and beautiful. And I just have the utmost admiration and respect for you.
Well, thank you. But I mean, in order to have this conversation, it's the conversation. It's the speaking and the listening.
Sure.
Let's talk about motherhood.
Beautiful.
I have 3 grandchildren now, so I'm getting to experience that. So that's pretty
That's
awesome.
a delight.
Yeah. And they're 6 and 3 and 1. So I have three kids. It's funny, because when you're a mom, you have one child at a time. When you're a grandmother, you can have many children at a time. Isn't that something?
It's true.
Isn't that something? I've never even really thought of that before, but it's true. So how has motherhood impacted your spiritual life?
Oh, gosh, this little lady has rearranged me in the most beautiful ways, decimated me. Like I said, just really put me back, not back, just recognize that I know so little, and that every moment has just been such an opportunity to perceive. And I just feel the learning and the awareness of the own innate intelligence that they're walking in with, and holding the space for that. I think the recognition before she was born, I had the illusion that being a mother, that you're the center of their life. And I recognize I'm a puzzle piece of her life. And that's freeing and beautiful. Also the gift of, recognizing she's a sovereign being and holding the space and reflecting her autonomy and giving her choice and, not exercising my will, believing that I know better because she schools me in that every day.
Oh man, that must be something. I'm curious about that. Tell me more of that. Tell me about more of that.
Well, if I say no, you're not having this, clunky, less effective. Nobody wants to hear a no, what they can or can't do. And so I've really found what's most sincere is to provide choices. Honey, would you like to have this? I'll provide 2 choices. And say if she doesn't want to go potty, well, would you like mom to carry her? Or would you like to walk? Walking. She'll always choose her independence. Walking. I'm like, okay. And so rather than you have to or trying to muscle that, which just creates resistance and friction, just speaking to her as an adult. She's 2 years old, or just over 2 years old, and I don't speak baby talk to her. I speak to her just like I would speak to you. I give her context. Not that I'm not playful and connected and warm, of course, but we're my grandfather. I remember one time he said to me, sweetheart, he said, I'll walk by a mirror and I'll be like, who the heck is that guy? Because, he almost forgot the stage of life or the physical vehicle of whether it's aged or what it looked like. And so the consciousness that's looking through our eyes, that's perceiving this moment, that's inside of an infant as well. And to recognize that she's learning the how-to go to the bathroom, or dexterity, or movement of how to navigate this world, but that doesn't diminish the sheer intelligence, innate wisdom, her capacity to perceive. She has ridiculous emotional intelligence, and that just blows my mind and heart. And then just recognizing that she's come to bring her light, she's come to bring her love, and just noticing what she's attracted to, noticing what she's pulled to. And what else surprises me is the position I enjoy the most is actually witness. I just simply enjoy to observe her and to observe her making her way in this world. I think it's absolutely extraordinary. And innocently, I think I thought I would have been or wanted to be that much more involved. And don't get me wrong, I am. And yet I'm surprised by how much I actually just enjoy to just take her in.
So she's being integrated into your faith.
her.
Yes?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
does she have her own faith?
Well,
She's only
integrated
2.
in,
I don't know.
I
I don't
that's a
know how soon that can happen.
That's a great question. Well, rather than teaching her my way, I look to just be an example of gratitude and of love and action, and to be prayerful, and to reflect what is already her nature. I'm not
Right.
teaching her anything. I'm just, whatever I have embodied and whatever I can offer, that's already, she's reflecting it back to me. I'm learning from her as much as I believe I'm here to even offer or teach anything. And so, no, I really don't have a set, she's just started piano the other day, and the teacher said, what is your outcome for her? What is your expectation? And I said, gosh, I really don't have an expectation. Maybe I hope that she can fall in love with music. And yet that's up to her. That's up to her. And so it's been, every day is just, every moment, every interaction. This morning, she was at breakfast, and she was, she had a big, big wave of emotion, and, just being with her and allowing that wave to rise and fall and have its way, no different than if you were hurting or having an experience or having your own. It's kind just to have somebody be present, just to have somebody be there.
And not try to solve it, but just to be there.
Yes. And I'm learning that every day. As well. Word, I'm loving, and I'm firm. I can't say I don't even know if it's the right word. I'm firm, but just I look to follow through with my word. I say what I mean. I look to, catch myself not to be negotiating with her of, if she's asked, I let her know the way ahead so that she can, she can be clear with that. But I think that helps her to self-regulate and to know that I'm not able to negotiate with life. You know what I mean? I can't just demand from life and expect life to give me something. It doesn't work that way. And I'll tell her, I'm like, honey, you can't demand from mommy. You can request. If I'm able to meet your request, and if it serves, I'll do so. If not, I'll provide her another choice. And so it's been, it is an area I'm ever so passionate about, and learning in real time. And she's brought in such a beautiful light and love to my own life, never mind to all those that have the privilege to meet her. And I'm just really humbled and grateful. And it was I was pregnant and lost a little girl at 4.5 months when I was 26 years old, I suppose, and then miscarried every other time I was pregnant. So it was over a 20-year journey to have.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yes. And, I did multiple cycles of IVF. I think it was actually like 11 or 12 cycles of IVF. And so there was many obstacles or challenges to overcome. And yet I had a hunger and a yearning to be a mother. And ironically, when I surrendered that and thought it was never going to happen, is really when it all, life came all into place.
Isn't that something? Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's quite a journey.
Yeah, it has been. And I think about it all the time. Every miscarriage, which at the time felt painful at different stages, and, some were early on, some were much later. And, at that time wanting that so bad. And yet I look back now and I think, I'm so grateful I didn't have that child. I'm so grateful I didn't have that little girl, because I have more to give at this stage of my life, and all those experiences strip so much. And so I just feel like I'm able to be a better human being, never mind a better mother to her from this perspective. And
yes, God gives us what we need in the moment, right?
It's so true. It's so true. I'm curious, how did you and Jordan introduce faith to your kids?
Well, Jordan was always teaching. He was always teaching, he's teaching more from the Bible now than he was.
takeaway.
Yeah, it's his faith has become less academic and more direct.
Yes.
More direct.
Yes.
And so I would say that with the children, it was, they knew that truth was important, you know? So that was definitely where we began, was that truth was, that there was no better way than the truth. Even if it was going to be painful, any other way would be worse. So it was just better to just tell the truth. So that was a very basic lesson that we taught the kids from very, very young age. But I would say, you know, I wanted my kids to go to church, but I never took them. I didn't always do the things, just like I didn't sit in the front seat of the car. I didn't always do the things that I wanted to do. And I recognize that now, I used to think that maybe it was someone else's fault, but it wasn't. It was all my decisions. Those were all my decisions. I never baptized my kids either. I wanted to, and I never insisted. Yeah. And it took a long time for me to recognize that I let that happen. Yeah. And I think, oh, well, I guess I wasn't that person, so I couldn't insist. I'm definitely that person now.
Yes.
But then again, that's part of being a grandmother too, is to be that person, that you can be that person. And I'd say the people in my childhood, it was my grandmother's. That's where the religion was. It wasn't in my nuclear family. There was no practice. There was no religious practice. And so in a way, I think that that's similar to the way it was with my children. In fact, when I really started talking about my faith, Michaela had me on her podcast, and everything she asked me, she was, I think, surprised because my faith was quite new, but my answers were spiritual. Most of my answers and my coping was all spiritual. And so then I would call her and talk to her, and I would talk to her about what I'd been experiencing, whether, you know, I'd made a mistake, but I'd made amends, and, you know, this kind. And she'd say, I'm not there yet, Mom. I'm not there yet. And then one day she called me and she said, Mom, something happened last night. And she said, I was praying because I just felt like things were lost and I needed help. And this morning, the help is there. And she said, and she recognized it, you know, and that was beautiful. And now Michaela has quite her faith and her daughter's faith are quite strong. And so even though it's come later in their life, it comes when it's supposed to, I guess.
It comes when it's supposed to. Yes. Yeah. And Tammy, your courageous responsibility and self-reflection is so powerful, and yet I can't think of anything. One of the beautiful gifts of my own parents that I just see in you is, because my father was in AA, you know, he would share his story, and he was like, look, I've done a lot of stupid things, and I've done this, and I was drunk. And my grade 1 teacher had asked about my father's name, and I guess he had stolen her father's car, got drunk, and took it in and drove it into our small town, and literally smashed through the front door of a window doors of a hotel in our local town. And, you know, he really put his humanness on the table, and that allowed myself to see that we're not meant to be perfect. We're here, and it's okay, and we do miss, and we do make mistakes, and that there's an allowance and a forgiveness, and that forgiveness doesn't come external. That forgiveness comes from inside, and acceptance, and you know, my parents were so beautiful and so allowing in my own journey to find what's been true for me in my faith and my walk. And I'm so appreciative that I didn't have something, not forced, but a have to. It was a get to, and it continues to be. And so, I really feel with our daughter, I'm not here to tell her what to believe. I think it's more important that I can be an example and share what's worked, what hasn't worked. And as well, my missus, just like you're sharing yours, where it's like, I haven't always been here. I haven't always thought this way. And holy smokes, I don't have this mastered.
Right.
You know, and I think that creates the space for each of us, like, what? Because otherwise we have these interpretations of, a lot of times people will be like, oh, it's easy for you, Tony Robbins or Sage Robbins. And it's like, what does that even mean? I'm human. You're human. Does it mean that we don't suffer or feel or have challenges? Just like, and that's where, that's where we all meet. That's where we all unite. That's where, and I just think that's ever so profound and beautiful. And there's so much in the external world right now, whether it be through politics or in social media or the news, that's dividing us. But that's where we meet. We all meet. We all have pain. We all have sorrow. We all have moments of happiness. We all walk all these in paths that we all have things to let go of, to forgive, to appreciate, and I think that is just one of the most beautiful realizations, that we are not alone and that we are all one and that we are all connected. And what I feel, you feel, what you feel, I feel, just in a different context. What the people, whoever's listening, if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't, and I'm suffering so greatly right now, I've been there. You've been there. We've all been there. Just different time, different place, different context. And so I just have such compassion for us all and what it takes to live, and that we were born at this time. I'm grateful that, we have the awareness that we do in the areas. And then I look forward to every moment at what it offers, and because it's certainly an opportunity to wake up here now.
Yes. And I think that's a good place to stop. Here now. Very nice. You're very welcome. And
to share and to be with you.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to you. We haven't really spoken for any amount of time, so this was really, really good.
It is really, really good. You're absolutely lovely. And
so are you.
God bless you for just being a voice and finding your voice. I relate to that very much, by the way. I'm certainly a bit more comfortable to be a support. I'm sure you probably can recognize that. And yet I feel a call at this stage to share.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, because I think, I often ask women if they'll speak to me. If I ask a man to speak to me, they always say yes. They always say yes. Women sometimes, they're more hesitant. And I really think that if we're really going to make a difference in the world, we have to share. When I was very sick, I prayed and I said, if I live, I promise that I will publicly, I'll speak publicly. And then I lived. So that was that decision.
That's a beautiful decision. And I'm blessed because of that decision. And I trust that everybody who joins and tunes into you, are blessed as well. And they will be because of your courage to be true to yourself and to live life sincerely. It's refreshing. And thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for being my guest.
Thanks for having me. Take care, Tammy. Please.